Putin is once again scaring the world with the Oreshnik missile. Moreover, he is threatening to expand its production. One of the discoveries, if you can call it that, of Russia's war against Ukraine has been the Oreshnik hypersonic missile, capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Moscow used this weapon for the first time when the front line in Donbass had stabilized, and it became clear that occupying a larger part of Ukraine was out of the question. At the same time, Ukrainian intelligence and security operations on Russian territory were scaling up and astonishing the world with their originality. Then, in November 2024, Russia struck Ukraine with the Oreshnik for the first time. And since then, this word has become part of military terminology. A year later, this missile is being talked about again. In Moscow, they claim that the Oreshnik is better than nuclear weapons, while in the West, there is growing concern. Hello everyone, my name is Anastasiia Husarieva. While you like this video and subscribe to our channel, I'll tell you all the details we've managed to find out about the Oreshnik, whether it can actually launch, what kind of damage it could cause, and whether Putin is really capable of using it not only against Ukraine, but also on European territory. Let's start with this. The head of the Kremlin, Putin, stated that the medium-range missile system with the hypersonic missile Oreshnik will be put on combat duty by the end of 2025. He also reminded that in November of last year, the first combat use of this missile was carried out in an attack on the city of Dnipro. I suggest you listen for yourself to what the Kremlin dictator said.
A medium-range missile system with the hypersonic Oreshnik missile will be put on combat duty. Last November, it was used in combat for the first time.
With this, Putin essentially confirmed yet another of his crimes. So statements about the Oreshnik have been coming up more and more frequently lately. And not only from the Russian leadership, but also from Ukrainian intelligence services and Western analysts. At the same time, the history of the system itself, its stated characteristics, and possibly its deployment outside of Russia are becoming important elements in the broader discussion about the balance of power. Nuclear deterrence and military pressure in Europe. On October 31st, it became known that on the night of July 8th to 9th, 2024, at the Kapustin Yar training ground, forces of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine, the Security Service of Ukraine, and the Foreign Intelligence Service destroyed one of 3 Russian medium-range ballistic missiles. Nutcracker. This information was made public after the Kremlin's statements about the first combat use. On the background, thank you. Increasing reports of its mass production. Almost simultaneously, on November 4th, representatives of the Russian authorities announced that Moscow had begun supplying weapons to Venezuela and was ready to deliver the Oreshnik system to them. Thus, the topic of the missile began to move beyond the exclusively Russian-Ukrainian context, and it started to appear in statements related to geographically distant regions. The rhetoric intensified. The activity around the Oreshnik continued into December as well. On December 10th, Putin stated that the deployment of the Oreshnik missile system in Russia's arsenal minimizes the need to use nuclear weapons. According to him, with a sufficient number of such modern systems, there is virtually no need to use nuclear weapons. Therefore, the focus should not be on adjusting the nuclear doctrine, thank you, but rather on the development of similar missile systems. These statements once again drew attention to the first use of the Oreshnik during the Russian-Ukrainian war. This is the kind of photo that was published online at the time. This is an illustrative photo from open sources. And here it likely shows the Rubezh intercontinental ballistic missile. So here's the thing. Let us recall that on November 21st, 2024, during a morning attack on Dnipro, Russian forces used an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time. The Rubezh, which is considered a potential nuclear warhead carrier. As part of that same attack, according to official data, an intercontinental ballistic missile was launched from Astrakhan Oblast, and from Tambov Oblast, a MiG-31K fighter jet was used. An air-launched ballistic missile Kh-47M2 Kinzhal, and from strategic bombers Tu-95MS, 7 Kh-101 cruise missiles were launched. And now, a year later, Oreshnik is back with the military. Or in the anti-trends, to be more precise. And according to Ukrainian intelligence, the main target of Oreshnik could be NATO. So, against the backdrop of this escalation, the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service has reported additional details about Russia's plan. The head of the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine, Ole Ivashchenko, stated that Russia is deploying medium-range ballistic missiles, Oreshnik, on the territory of Belarus. not so much to put pressure on Ukraine, but rather to influence the European Union and NATO countries, as well as to protect the installations from possible Ukrainian strikes. Ivashchenko also noted that military facilities are being constructed on the territory of Belarus for this purpose, including surveillance and communication systems. At the same time, he emphasized that these measures have not been implemented yet. For now. According to him, deploying the Oreshnik without the necessary infrastructure would mean that the system would only serve as a mock-up, lacking full combat capabilities. Ivashchenko also stated that Belarus cannot use this weapon independently, since it will be part of the unified command system of the strategic missile forces of the Russian Federation. Thus, according to him, control over the complexes still remains with Moscow. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the deployment of Oreshnik on the territory of Belarus is a tool of pressure, primarily on the EU and NATO. Such a move, according to Ivashchenko, will allow Russia to expand its capabilities to strike targets in the capitals of European countries. And it will significantly reduce the missile flight time compared to launches from the Kapustin Yar range. Earlier, Ukrainian intelligence reported that the deployment of Oreshnik in Belarus is planned precisely by the end of 2025, most likely in the Mozyr region. And according to this data, the missiles could be located just 120 to 140 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, and about 200 kilometers from Lithuania, the nearest country of the North Atlantic Alliance and the European Union. Interestingly, the information about the ramp-up of Oreshnik production first appeared, oddly enough, not in Putin's statements, but specifically in reports from Ukrainian intelligence. A few days before the speeches of the Russian president, according to the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine, Russia plans to increase the serial production of the medium-range ballistic missile Oreshnik and is also considering options for its modernization. As Oleg Ivashchenko claims, the development program for the Oreshnik missile is a top priority for the Kremlin. This is not only about increasing the number of missiles themselves, but also about exploring possibilities for their technical improvement. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the main goal is to enhance the effectiveness of the warhead, with particular emphasis placed on options specifically with nuclear armament for this missile. At the same time, statements from Russian state sources are being made, filled with their usual aggression. The state agency TASS, citing official data, claims that the Oreshnik missile is capable of carrying a warhead weighing up to 1.5 tons, and its maximum strike range is 5,500 kilometers. According to this data, the missile's flight time from the Kapustin Yar test site to NATO headquarters in Brussels is only 17 minutes. To the Ramstein Air Base in Germany, it is 15 minutes. To the American Missile Defense Base in Redzikowo, Poland, 11 minutes. It is also reported that the Oreshnik can deliver nuclear warheads with a total yield of up to 900 kilotons, which, according to Russian sources, is comparable to 45 Hiroshima explosions. These specifications are widely circulated in Russian state media and used in official rhetoric. And I, in turn, will also remind you that in October, the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk, stated that Ukraine had destroyed one of the 3 Russian Oreshniks back in the summer before last, and according to him, this happened at the training ground, Kapustin Yar, in the summer of 2023. However, the Ukrainian side decided to announce this only now. Malyuk clarified that the operation was carried out by special services without disclosing details of how it was executed. And as usual, I suggest you listen in.
By the way, we've never mentioned this before, but briefly we can logically say that one of the 3 launches was successfully destroyed on their territory at Kapustin Yar by the efforts of the HUR, SBU, and SZR. We won't be the ones to decide that now.
Not our decision. Crucial.
Date. It was a very successful operation. A mission. And at that time, we hadn't said this up to the 40th. A lot of numbers have passed since then.
If we can talk about it, that means at least 1 is gone. The usage, you remember. We believe so, Kylie Ivanovich. There are still about 2 left somewhere.
And they set them up carefully for display.
On the cover, yes, there's 1 and a few more. We destroyed 1. As for the tension, which is actually increasing, it is rising specifically in NATO countries. On November 14th, the German newspaper Die Welt, citing a report from NATO intelligence, reported that Russian weapons, Oreshnik, Oreshnik, and Poseidon pose a truly serious threat to NATO's defense. The document notes that the Oreshnik missile is capable of reaching speeds of over 900 kilometers per hour, has high maneuverability, a long flight range, and is mobile in terms of launch capability. According to the authors of the report, the existing problems for the air defense and missile defense systems are made more difficult precisely by the range and maneuverability of this cruise missile. What about Oreshnik specifically? The NATO report highlights the concerns of Western experts about the unknown technical characteristics of the system, its range, and its capability to be equipped with various warheads, including, in particular, nuclear ones. The document notes that the ability to strike targets anywhere in Europe, as well as the mobility of the carrier, gives the system a high chance of survival. At the same time, the lack of clarity regarding the types of warheads, according to the authors, creates additional challenges for NATO's defense planning. Special attention in the Die Welt article, which was published, is given to the Poseidon underwater vehicles, which, according to intelligence assessments, are difficult to detect and attack when operating at great depths. This is especially true given the shortage of anti-submarine torpedoes with the necessary speed and range. The topic of the Oreshnik has also continued in Belarus. As you know, on December 18th, the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, stated that the missile system was delivered from Russia on Wednesday, and it has already been put on combat duty. The Oreshnik has been with us since yesterday and is taking up combat duty, he said. He did not specify any additional details regarding the number of systems or the conditions of their deployment. At this point, it can be said that if peace talks between Russia and Ukraine fail, the word Oreshnik will appear more and more frequently in the media. Well, we'll keep an eye on it and keep you informed. Thank you for being with us. I hope you found this video useful and that you'll show your appreciation with your comments and likes. And we'll see you in our next videos, broadcasts, and episodes. My name is Anastasiia Husarieva. Take care of yourselves, please, and wash your hands with soap. Bye-bye, everyone.